What's going on, Wiz Nation? Welcome to another episode of State of the Wizards. This is episode 29. I'm your host, D-Can, along with my co-host, K Jose. K Jose, what's going on?
Doing pretty good, man. How are you doing this evening?
Doing good, man. Can't complain. Can't complain.
Good,
Ready to talk
good,
some
good.
Wizards today?
Oh yeah, we got a lot to cover tonight. So absolutely.
Absolutely. So today, we're going to discuss the Wizards sitting at 11 and 10 on the season,
Hmm.
social media narratives, the Wizards win versus the T-Wolves, Rui's injury, and our next game versus the Nets. So, before we get started, if this is your first time tuning in to the channel, thank you. Please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Follow me at Wizards Mafia and follow K Jose at DC Hoopla on Twitter. Also, please follow us at State of the Wizards on Instagram and State of the Wizards on Twitter. All right. So you ready to get started?
Oh, absolutely. Let's get it.
All right, let's do it. So first question, K Jose. The Wizards beat the Timberwolves last night, snapping the 3-game losing streak,
Hmm.
142, 127. What were some of the key takeaways from the game, and what were some of things you noticed we could do better to start another streak versus the Nets tomorrow night?
Well, what I would say is the way we played last night, we played actually as a team, but I mean, we got to talk about Porzingis. I mean, he had 41 and 31 minutes. He was perfect from the free throw line, 6 for 10 from downtown. Like he was unstoppable last night. He only had 4 rebounds, but when you shooting like the way he was shooting, you're not really even concerned about the rebounding. But that was actually a very good bounce back game for him because he struggled the last 2 games. He got abused by Bam Bio. He didn't do too well against Al Horford.
Mhm.
So what I would like to see going forward from this team is just be consistent. One of the things that Porzingis said was that, you know, um, we have to stop playing down to the competition. And that's been an ongoing issue, whether he was here or anybody else previously, that we had a tendency to play down to our competition. So that I will blame coaching because you got to get these guys prepared and they have to understand that you're not a team that can just turn it on and turn it off whenever the hell you feel like it.
Correct.
But the Timberwolves was a team that the Wizards was able to take advantage of. You really had two mid-level teams going against each other, and with all the talent that the Timberwolves have, you just have to scratch your scalp and say, well, why is this team not playing, as a unit? Which I think you said that's more the coaching. But do I expect this team to play like that tomorrow night against the Nets? I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say that I am expecting them to do that, but at the moment, I'm just happy that Porzingis was able to give us 41 points and was able to walk away healthy.
Absolutely, man. Porzingis really came through last night. Last night was, a much needed Porzingis show out game, I think.
Hmm.
Did it against, he did it against a team that has two respectable bigs and Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns. Just going through some of their statistics. Edwards finished with 29 points, Rudy had 19, D'Angelo Russell at 17, and Karl Anthony Towns, who got injured with the right calf, I think, strain. He
Is it
left
the
the
right
game.
calf string?
I,
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I think that's what was diagnosed. He finished with 8 points. And I look at that team and I'm like, that team is loaded with talent.
Yeah.
And for them to play as mediocre as they did against us, I was kind of shocked because you would think with that much spread out talent, they would be much better. And we're not even
Hmm.
really talking about their bench. I mean, they got respectable shooters, Forbes, um, that guy Anderson, I believe. He
Yeah,
was
Kyle Anderson.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Kyle Anderson. Yeah, I mean, and then that guy Noel, he's a good 3-point shooter. So it's not like they don't have the talent. I think that last night, we even though we exploited their defense and their weaknesses, I looked at it like the T Wolves just they're just a discombobulated team to me. They just
Yeah,
seem
they are.
Yeah, they just seem like they're disinterested. They don't really play up, to the competition. They play down to the competition. And like just like the Wizards tend to do the exact same thing. We have respectable players on our team. We got guys that can put the ball in the hoop, and they're very inconsistent. But to look at the Timberwolves last night and their lack of offensive firepower, I was just shocked
Hmm.
by it. I was just shocked by that.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a little bit shocked by it too. I mean, especially when you think about what they gave up to get Rudy Gobert, you're kind of thinking to yourself like, well, why would this team be performing like that? So you basically have two teams with two different situations. We have veteran players on our team. You have one that's taking up 35% of the salary cap, but then you have two other players as part of the big three who are looking for paydays, which we'll talk about that a little bit later. Um, so if I had to look at it, one thing that I will say that the Timberwolves and the Wizards do have in common, their future is not really that bright because the Timberwolves sacrificed a lot of picks and we got a lot of restrictions on our picks. So some
So
people say, man, I would hate go ahead.
we're both in the win now trajectory.
We're in the win now trajectory. You're absolutely right. I think the only difference is that, you know, the Timberwolves, at least they have somewhat some young players. Um, you can build around, you can build around what's his name? Anthony Edwards.
Mhm.
You can build around Carl Anthony Towns if you can get him to stop playing like a pussy cat.
Mhm.
I mean, it just depends. I mean, their future. I like what they have a little bit better than what we have.
Right,
So
right.
we're both mediocre teams that our future is kind of uncertain.
But
Let's put it.
that's what I'm saying. It's like they have far better talent than we do. Imagine if we had Cat.
Yeah,
Imagine if we had Rudy Gobert. You see what I'm
yeah.
saying? Imagine
Imagine we had Anthony Anderson. I mean Anthony Edwards.
right, Anthony. Like I'm thinking about all the talent that's spread out over there, 1 through 5. It's not like they really don't have. I mean, Edwards is still growing. Russell is a vet at this point. Cat is a vet at this point. Rudy is a vet at this point. I mean, they got superstar quality players over there, man. They got championship aspiration, a very aspiring championship team, like
Hmm.
built. It's just the quality isn't meeting the standards.
It's
So
true. That's
and and,
true.
and so if you have a coach who can really put it together, in my opinion, I think that would be a very dangerous team. But
Hmm.
anyway, just looking at the stats, Minnesota shot 50% from the field, so it wasn't like they were shooting bad. They just wasn't shooting as hot as we were. We were shooting 57%.
Hmm.
They did out rebound us. That was going to be a given. Those two, they got great rebounders over there. Here's the eye glaring stat. They had 18 turnovers to our 7. Now we've been taking care of the ball a lot better
That
than
is very true.
the opposing teams. I think West has done a great job, making sure that this team, isn't turning the ball over at a crazy rate. And they shot the ball very, very talking about the T Wolves, they shot the ball poorly from the field at 25% from three. Um, the Wizards did get to the line. They got to the line 27 times. We made 23 of them. So we took advantage of that opportunity from the strike. 31 assists from the Wizards. 31
Yeah.
assists last night. That if there's any formula for success with this team,
It's passing the ball.
it would be to get that, yep, pass the ball and keep that number high. We didn't get, outplayed in the paint, even though, we still gave up 62 points in the paint, but we matched them with 62. And
Hmm.
the bench didn't get outplayed crazy.
No.
They have 50 bench points, we have 43. We built a 28-point lead. Here's the
Hmm.
problem that I have though. We built a 28-point lead and then we and then we let it slip.
Hmm.
A point in the game where the T Wolves got it down to 9 points, and
Yeah.
that's still a cause for concern. What do you say about that?
Yeah, it is a cause for concern, but that goes back to Porzingis saying that we play down to the competition. Another thing too is, I think the Heat put the blueprint out how to slow us down. And what that is playing 3-2 zone.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't know how to counter a 3-2 zone. So one of the things I have to say, when Karl Anthony Towns, even though I said he played soft, once he went down, that changed the whole dynamic of the basketball game because that's when we actually just took over.
Mm-hmm.
So you almost have to say to yourself, what would have been the outcome if he had not got injured? We would actually be talking about a totally different story. I mean, I think Porzingis probably would have went off. Now, if you think about it, Porzingis had 29 points in the first half, and he finished out with 41. So the Timberwolves actually did a pretty good job
Mm-hmm.
sustaining him a little bit in the second half.
Yeah.
Um, but a cause of concern is when we have these big leads and then we squander them away. And a lot of people are traumatized of how we did that against the Clippers the previous season. We had a 35-point lead and we lost to them by 1 point.
Good point. Good point.
So
That cannot
it's
happen.
it's more of a discipline problem with this team where we get these big leads and I don't know if I guess it's a sense of arrogance that we have where we just feel that these teams are just going to roll over and die. And then next thing you know, we find ourselves in an actual ball game. So we're playing against the Nets tomorrow night. We can't expect it. We already got embarrassed by them when they beat us 42 points with no Kyrie. I don't know if Ben Simmons is going to be playing tomorrow. I wouldn't be shocked if he's not,
Yeah,
but Kyrie
supposedly.
will be playing.
Yeah, supposedly there's reports that Ben Simmons may sit tomorrow night, and they may rest him.
I don't think the Nets are really worried too much about that.
Yeah.
But you're going to have Kyrie and you're going to have KD. So those are two players you got to worry about. And we can't go up to Brooklyn thinking that, oh, well, we can just go in there and kind of just sleepwalk through the game. No, that's not going to be the case. We're not that type of team.
Right. BK sitting at 11 and 11. They've been playing 500 basketball as well, but eventually we all know that they're going to find their footing. And
Yeah,
we don't want them to find their footing against us. But, history shows that 9 times out of 10, teams do take advantage of the Wizards. They take
yeah.
advantage of the matchup, and, maybe, we can hold our own tomorrow night. Um, so moving along, K Jose, social media has been the kingdom source of Wizards narratives. The recent
Yeah.
one, which is right in the middle of rebuild talks, starting in 2019 during the bubble season. Was that considered a rebuild year?
Hell no. To be honest with you, man, that was the dumbest take I've ever seen in my life, man. We how in the world were we tanking that year and we finished with the ninth pick? That team actually was trying to compete that year.
Mm-hmm.
We actually won 25 games. That was a condensed season, by the way. So we only played 72 games. And we won 25 of those games. And we were invited to the play-in. So how did we tank that year and we were invited to the play-in? The
Well,
Golden State Warriors only won 15 games. And they had the number 2 pick where they drafted Wiseman. So if we were really tanking, let's just stick. If we were really tanking, shouldn't we have lost more games than just 25? I remember you and I had this conversation. You said to me, man, we won too many games to be tanking.
yeah.
So why in the world were people on Wizards Twitter? Some, to be honest with you, the person who started that literally woke up that morning and said, you know what? I'm just going to say that we tanked that year. You can't convince me that we didn't tank that year. And to me, that's crazy, crazy. And then you had somebody actually going along with that narrative. Like, come on, man,
let's uh
stop it.
let's look at the roster here. I'm gonna pull up the roster here, and let's just kind of go over it. Now, you and I both talked about this, right?
Hmm.
That year, you know, we didn't have Wall, right? And Wall was deemed out for the season.
Yes,
From my understanding, that was also the year we played in the bubble,
it
right? That was
was.
the pandemic. That was the pandemic season.
Yes,
And so that year, before the year started, the idea was to compete for the playoffs
it was.
because we didn't chalk up Wall being out for the season as a missed opportunity. We chalked up Wall being out for the season as another year to prove that we could still win without John Wall, right or wrong.
That is absolutely 1,000% right.
Right. I remember when we used to have these conversations over the summertime with the guys who were ready to move on past Wall and start building around bankroll, Bradley Bill.
Yeah,
And they were basically saying at the time, if Wall comes back, then I don't want to hear no excuses with this upcoming season and this roster because we have enough to contend and compete in the East.
that
Was
is
that
very true.
was that not the rhetoric going into the 2018-2019 season or the
It was. But the
2018-2020
2019-2020, yeah, that was
2019 2020?
absolutely it. And if you remember, Tommy Shepard said we're going to do everything to build around bankroll that year too, because he was going to, he was going to be the face.
Right. Well, I remember that. I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yep.
Oh man. So looking at this roster here
Hmm.
now, the argument online was the roster wasn't put together to, I guess, compete. I mean,
Yeah, that was
I
the
didn't,
argument.
yeah, I didn't really understand that argument because Davies Bertans, was that the year he got his contract extension?
That was the year before. Well, that actually was the year that he had that led to him getting that extension.
It was the year that led to him getting that extension.
Yeah, it was the year that led him to get it. Yep.
Right. So Tommy Shepard believed in these guys. He believed in Bertans. He believed in Troy Brown Jr. to step up, right? He believed in Thomas Bryant to step up. These were guys that he believed in that was going to step up and step in. When we drafted Rui, yes, he was a rookie, but Rui with his college experience, he was asked to come in and be an immediate impact player. It wasn't
That
like
is very true.
we were treating Rui like he was Johnny Davis and we were sending him to the G League,
Nope.
right? So him being an immediate impact player, it meant something. If we treated this like a rebuild, then I don't think that we would have asked Rui to, play as many minutes as we did. But
Not only that, we had also went and signed Isaiah Thomas. And I know what the argument was Esau Bonga, Troy Brown Jr., Thomas Bryant. They were looking at the young guys. You look at, Shabazz Napier. Like, come on, man. We couldn't have been actually trying to compete with these guys. Like, look at this roster. Well, we were actually trying to compete, you
so
know.
so that brings me to another point. Look at that year and look at the Wizards awards. Rui was all rookie second team. Rui was also in the Rising Stars Challenge. So was Mo Wagner. And Davies Bertans participated in the 3-point shootout.
Yep.
So my thing is it can't be too much of a rebuild if your guys are getting, all-star appearances. You know what I mean? They're participating in all-stars, and I just think that it's laughable because, and I know what people are gonna say, that don't mean anything. The Bullets sucked and Tim Legler was in the 3-point contest. That didn't mean nothing. No, but the point is these players, they still had vital roles for this team. And
Yeah. Yeah,
look
they
at the
did.
South. Here's another point. Look at the Southeast Division. The Miami Heat won 44 games.
Yep.
Were they supposed to win 44 games that season?
No, and they weren't even supposed to be going to the finals that year either.
Thank you. There you go. They wasn't even supposed to go to the finals, and they wasn't even supposed to win 44 games. Who was the
Here's
next
another
best?
thing.
Go ahead.
Look at the Magic. Were they supposed to
Exactly.
win 33 games that
No,
year?
no.
No.
The Charlotte Hornets wasn't supposed to win as many games. Well, yeah, there you go. They won 23 games. So they weren't supposed to be good. The Southeast Division was not good that year, period. But we was good enough
Mm.
to compete in the Southeast Division. We were good enough. The Miami Heat they exceeded expectations. And we know why they exceeded expectations. Because of what? because of coaching,
Exactly.
because of Eric Spoelstra.
Exactly. That's
But
why they overachieve every year.
look at the Southeast. This is a prime example right here. Just look at the Southeast Division, man. You know, every team wasn't world beaters. Like if anything, every team was really around the uh same wavelength. Like
Yeah.
there was not one team that stood out. Miami only won 44 games.
Hmm.
They weren't dominant. No team in the Southeast Division was dominant. So, you know, if you're gonna say that the Wizards were rebuilding, well, I guess the Heat was rebuilding too. I guess the Magic was rebuilding. I guess the Hornets was rebuilding, and the Hawks was. Everyone was rebuilding then, if that's the case.
Yeah. I mean, but my thing is this, man. We weren't tanking that year. We didn't tank to get the ninth
So,
pick. We didn't tank.
what's the argument? Is it rebuilding or tanking? What is the argument?
The argument was we were tanking.
We were.
Rebuild was a totally different conversation, but the argument was that we tanked. We tanked the 2019-2020 season. You can't convince me that we tanked for Denny Avdia. Let's just be honest with you. You guys complain about Denny Avdia. Talk about we should have got Tyrese Halliburton. We should have either got Josh Giddey, but we actually drafted Denny Avdia. Is that what you're going to tell me, that we tanked to get Denny Avdia? Please make it make sense. You would have an argument if we were in the top three in the draft that year, but we wasn't.
No,
We didn't tank.
we weren't
We didn't
top.
tank that year.
Yeah,
Look,
we
if you
weren't.
look at the roster too, man, you got 9 players on this roster that gave us double digits. Now you can probably take it for what it's worth when you think about Shabazz Napier. You know, he was added on, but these guys were really trying to compete.
They were. They
They really
absolutely.
was trying to compete. So I don't know why that conversation was even had yesterday. It was a dumbass conversation. Dumb.
I look at exactly. I look at this. I look at this roster, and I'm not saying to myself that they are, you know, a championship squad. No, but I'm looking at this roster, and I'm seeing where guys are getting minutes, and those minutes are spread out, and they were very competitive. You know, they were very competitive games. If I'm not mistaken, Thomas Bryant had a pretty good first half of the season. Did he not?
Mm-hmm.
He got
Yeah,
injured,
he did.
right? He got injured, but he had a really good first half of the season. And you know, Bankroll, that was his year. He scored 30 points per game. He came out of his shell post John Wall, and he took on the responsibilities because he believed that this team could compete and contend and make the playoffs. That was something that was stated prior to the season.
Yep.
He made a statement himself. He acknowledged that Wall wouldn't be there. Teams would know that. Teams would come after the Wizards knowing that. And the Wizards put together this roster to combat to combat that. That was this was their solution to that.
Agreed.
Yes, looking back on it, 2020, hindsight is always 2020. People are always gonna say, well, look at this roster. You know, we had Davies Bertans, Ish Smith, Troy Brown Jr., you're asking a Rui Hachimura to step up. That's hindsight, man. At the time, we were at the time this year happened, we believed that this roster was a playoff roster. And you guys who believe that this was a tank year, I know you're lying, because if Wall was healthy and he was playing, this would have been the roster that you would have expected us to make to make the playoffs with. Some of you guys was talking about championship, believe it or not. I know some people who was telling me that it was championship or bust that year if Wall was healthy.
Yeah,
I
that's true.
you was on those conversations.
Yeah, these were conversations we was having offline. So yeah, that is very true.
So not having Wall or having Wall, this was the roster that the Wizards believe could contend and make the playoffs with. Period.
Yeah. Let me say this, man. Please, Wizards Twitter, please stop bringing up the 2019-2020 season, man. Please stop bringing it up. It's over with. These guys are gone. There's no more Davies Bertans, no Troy Brown Jr. Thomas is gone. Isaiah is gone. All these guys are gone. Stop bringing up the 2019-2020 season as your scapegoat for why the win now is not working. Please stop. It's ridiculous. It's becoming pointless. Again, man, I was frustrated to even read that on the timeline yesterday. I'm like, are you kidding me? These people are really trying to convince everybody that we were tanking. Yeah, I even sort of saw the person saying, no, I'm just going to say we just tanked that year. Well, you're on the island by yourself. But then again, not necessarily. You had somebody with you. But come on, man.
So where did the
Stop bringing up the
rebuild? So where did the
2019
rebuild
2020
talk?
season.
So where did the rebuild talk come from?
So the rebuild talk came from a separate conversation that I had where get this. So now the rebuild that I was told was when we traded Wall for Westbrook, that began the rebuild for the Wizards.
Hmm?
Yeah. So we
So wait
traded
a minute.
five.
So we were tanking in 2019. We were tanking in 2019 with our Wall, and then we officially started the rebuild when we traded Wall away for Russell Westbrook.
Yes. Now, just stay with me on this one. Now, this was a conversation I had with somebody else who's a damn idiot. But I said that look what the Utah Jazz is doing right now. Now, let me ask you a question, DK. The Utah Jazz, would you say that they're rebuilding right now?
I mean, yeah. I mean,
And explain why you say they're rebuilding.
because they got rid of Rudy Gobert, Donovan Mitchell. They got rid of their core players.
Okay. So what I was told was, well, they really was doing a retool. And the reason being for that, because almost half of the roster is still the same. Whereas with the Wizards, we only had two returning players, and the vast majority of the roster was completely different. So that is deemed a rebuild. So we moved Wall for Westbrook. We moved a five-time All-Star for a nine-time All-Star, future Hall of Famer. That's supposed to be a start of a rebuild. Like, come
No,
on, man. So I'm assuming,
you swap one All Star for another All Star. That's not what
yeah,
the
it's just
Jazz. That's not what the Jazz did.
no, they didn't. Didn't you? Weren't you and I told that when we moved Wall for Westbrook, that was considered an upgrade?
Yes,
So
most.
how is that a rebuild?
It's not a rebuild. I don't even know why anybody would even think that that's a rebuild. Not even remotely close to one. You're literally swapping one
No,
All
it's
Star
not.
for the other. You have a comparable player alongside Bankroll Bill. If you replace one with one, then that that doesn't change the dynamics at all. If anything, that ups the ante because you said that guy was an upgrade compared to the other franchise players. So that wasn't a rebuild at all. That wasn't starting one, beginning one. If anything, that was just remaining the course. That
Exactly.
that was just following suit basically.
So let me just take it off of basketball for a moment. I'm gonna ask you a question because we only got like a minute and 56 seconds left. You need an alternator for your vehicle. Are you gonna go and buy it out of AutoZone, or are you gonna go to the junkyard and pull one off of an old vehicle and put it on yours?
I'm
And
gonna
you only
go.
got a 30-day warranty.
I'm gonna go to the AutoZone, man.
Okay, there you go. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean,
Logic,
logic.
logic,
That's all I'm saying, man. I mean,
logic.
it's just common sense. So far, Wizards Twitter, I've seen two of the stupidest arguments. The whole tanking 2019, 2020, dumb ass argument, and Wall for Westbrook was the start of a rebuild. I've heard it all. Especially
Well,
when the owner has said we would never tank and he can't stomach a rebuild. But somehow, when we moved Wall, we actually began a rebuild. How can we begin a rebuild if Bankroll is still on the damn team?
you don't start a rebuild until all of your core guys are gone. Period.
Thank
That's it. You don't start a rebuild until all of your core guys are gone. The Jazz is a prime example of it. Other teams have done it. The Wizards are staying the course with one player, and then before that, it was with two players. You replace one All Star with another All Star. That's not a rebuild. Okay, period. So that wraps up the first part of State of the Wizards. Be sure to stay tuned for the second part. And once again, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. We'll be right back. Don't go nowhere. Stay tuned. Welcome back, Wiz Nation, to part two of State of the Wizards. I'm your host, D Can, along with my co host, K Jose. Now, K Jose, In the
Mm-hmm.
second part of State of the Wizards, we're going to touch on Rui. Now, Rui's injury, we just learned Rui has missed the last 5 games due to ankle soreness in his right ankle. And
Mm-hmm.
recently discovered today that he has a bone bruise on that same ankle. He's out tomorrow and for the foreseeable future. How detrimental is this injury for the Wizards right now?
Oh man, we're gonna feel it. I mean, you're gonna be missing his production coming off the bench. You're gonna actually miss his toughness. You're gonna have mixed reviews. Some people are gonna say, okay, well, he's injury prone. We need to get him out of here. And then, you know, he's a restricted free agent, so it actually may work in the Wizards' favor when it comes down to the offer sheet. I don't think a team is going to offer him a $90 million offer sheet. I think that's going to decrease. I'm kind of curious on how much time he's going to miss because I'm thinking with this bone bruise, he's going to miss a significant amount of time, in my opinion. But his presence, his points is definitely going to be missing. We're going to feel it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can't afford to lose him. I'm gonna be honest with you because I don't know where you're gonna get that other production from off the bench.
Yeah, I agree. The Wizards are the bench is he's needed off the bench. Let's just put it that way. Rui, I believe I think he's right at his average of 11 and a half, maybe 12 points per game. Um,
Mm-hmm.
people look at Rui sometimes and I think they don't really see the value as much. Yeah, he's right at 11.6 points per game and
Right.
he's shooting 48% from the field. I don't think people really understand the value that he holds. Rui is a potential two-way player in this league. People they like to criticize and little tidbits in his game, little things in his game, and they say, well, it's easy to replace somebody like Rui. Every time you turn around on social media, somebody's throwing Rui into a trade or something like that. But it wasn't Rui's
Yeah.
fault for why he was relegated as a six man. That's what we relegated him to.
Yeah.
So that position needs to be filled in over these next couple of weeks. Someone else needs to come in and become that spark off the bench. You know, so far the starters have been picking up a lot more for the bench, for the lack thereof from the bench. But it's not going to be like that every game.
No.
Every game is going to be something different where
Mm-hmm.
starters are going to struggle and then the bench comes in and you may need that 11 and a half, 12 points from Rui on 48% shooting. You're going to need some type of contributions off the bench. And because Rui had his moments where he was good on defense and he was very consistent offensively. We're gonna miss that. To me, it's very detrimental. It's very detrimental
Mm-hmm.
because we don't know how long we're gonna be missing this caliber of player. You know, for the next couple of games, we don't know.
Right. So, yeah, like I said, I definitely believe his presence is going to be missed, man. So what that does is that takes me to the next point, which is Kyle Kuzma and KP. These two players are actually can opt out of their deals, which I believe they will definitely do that to sign for a long-term deal, with this team. We're the team that can pay these guys the most money. So with Kyle Kuzma, he's been on a tear these last several games. He had 23 points last night. He was a plus 28, shot 56% from the field, 57% from three. What do you think, man? Do you think that this team should go ahead and pay for Kuzma's services, or should we do what I've been saying that we should do is sell him high?
Um, to be honest with you, I don't know. I don't know right now because Kuzma is he's at a crossroads with the Wizards. The reason why I say that is because he can put up all-star like numbers and not be an all-star this season. That that puts his value, in my opinion, in an in-between state because it's easier to make that decision when you're an all-star. It's easy to say he's worth 30 million if he's an all-star, right or wrong.
True.
All right. So if he doesn't make the All-Star team but puts up All-Star like numbers, where does that put him? I don't know, because then you say to yourself, well, you can give him the money and then hope that he can continue playing at that level, or you can really get a drop off, right? And then you feel like you overpaid for somebody like Kuz. So he's really at a crossroads. Like, is he going to be the best, 3/4 forward that we're going to see in the next 3 or 4 years? Or can we rely on Rui to be that 3/4 going forward? Um, in my opinion, I think you go with the younger guy. I don't think you give Kuz that money because
Hmm.
there's no guarantee that Kuz gives us an additional 5 or 6, additional wins in the standings. Kuz here's the thing that I've learned about Kuz since he's been a Wizard. He's he is he's about as consistent as you're going to get right now.
Hmm.
He's about as consistent as you're going to get of a player right now. However, he has his moments where he disappears.
Yes.
And which one matters the most right now? The fact that he can put together a good 5, 6 game stretch, or the fact that he can disappear for 2 or 3 games? See, let me tell you why that's hard to gauge, because we're a 500 basketball team. So he's afforded some bad games.
Yeah.
But if we want to be a good contender, we want to be a championship caliber team, then we're going to need Kuz to be consistent and play at an all-star level every night. So to answer your question, I personally say you don't give him what he's asking for.
Hmm.
I say if you give him anything, you give him a hometown discount
Okay.
and take it or leave it. If you don't take it, then we go with the future. If you do take it, you can still afford to keep Rui. You can still afford to keep KP. Ruse is just Ruse. Kuz is just on a he's just on a hometown discount.
Okay.
That's where I'm at. But you can sell them high, but the question then is what's your return? Because whatever your return is, you're still going to have to worry about paying whoever his return is.
That is true too, depending on the situation. Maybe who your return is can probably be a player on a rookie deal. Maybe you might get a draft pick in return. See, with Kuzma, people are going to say, well, and this is the same thing we was told about bankroll just a few years ago. Well, you don't want to get rid of a guy that's that young, putting up those type of numbers. So then it comes to the point of, well, we're just going to overpay the guy just because. Now, if you remember, we had Davis Bertans that had a very good year and he got paid. But then what happened? He came in out of shape and he wasn't the same Davis Bertans. Now, it wasn't just the fact that he was out of shape. He actually resigned with the expectation to play alongside Wall. But guess what? We traded John Wall away.
Mm-hmm.
So then Davis Bertans just became a liability, and then we eventually flipped him last year for Porzingis. So when it comes down to Kuz, what I'm afraid of is that he's going to command anywhere between 25 to $30 million. And being so that we're constantly pushing this big three of bankroll, KP, and Kuzma, I'm afraid that we're just going to go ahead and pay Kuzma whatever it is that he's asking for because we don't want to try to find if we can replace his production from
Well,
the
are you
young
are
guy.
you are you afraid we're gonna give him that, or
I'm
are
a part of me, I'm afraid that we will be foolish to give him whatever it is that he wants because we're
right,
constantly pushing this big three.
right,
Like you and I have already came to the conclusion that KP is going to get his money regardless. He's just
right,
going to get it.
yeah,
But what I'm more concerned about is, are we going to take that same approach when it comes down to Kuzma? Because people love Kuz. They're
mm.
saying he's a leader. He is very vocal. He is a leader. But are we going to pay him because we truly believe that him, Bankroll, and KP can really take us to whatever the hell it is we think they can take us. The key is to win a championship. I think when you got 110 to 120 million dollars committed to three guys, that's probably not good enough to even get you to the second round of the playoffs. I think it's just foolish.
Let me ask you this question. What is your issue with the big three? And just be honest, because I'm gonna be honest too. Just be honest.
Okay.
What is your issue with the big three?
My issue with the big three is these are three complementary players that I don't believe can take us to the promised land.
Okay.
That's my issue. I would say that Porzingis is the most talented out of all three, but even when it comes down to Porzingis, the issue that I have with him is durability. He's been healthy so far this season, but you just know in the back of your mind he's gonna miss a string of games.
Yeah.
You kind of know that same thing with Bankroll. He's gonna miss a string of games.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With Kuz, I sometimes think back to when he played for the Lakers and how the way the Lakers used him. I still see Kuzma as that type of player, and he's playing at Washington, and of course he has the green light to play the way he does. But would this Kuzma play like this if he was with the Golden State Warriors?
Well, to answer that question, I would say he would not be the same Kuzma because the Warriors, they operate and their schemes are completely different. They're not surrounded around Kuzma.
Exactly.
Kuzma's a third option here. He would be the fourth or the fifth option in Golden State.
Exactly.
He would come off the bench, I do believe, behind Draymond Green, and he would be a very serviceable role player. But he would be the sixth man. I mean, Jordan Poole would probably be relegated to more of the seventh man. But I still don't think, I mean, obviously Kuz he's very serviceable. Let's put it that way. You can plug him in anywhere and he'll get his buckets. He'll get his points. And that's what we learned about Kuz. That's why I said, just 5 minutes ago, he's very consistent, but he has his moments where he's very inconsistent. And that tells me that he's not an everyday core guy. To me, I don't see him as a core player like other people see him. And the reason being is because you don't get that consistency every night. Yes, people are granted bad games. No doubt about it. It's 82 game schedule. Players are granted bad games. When we had Caron Butler, we knew what Caron Butler gave us. We knew that Caron Butler was also a defensive specialist.
Mm-hmm.
He was just like Kuz, very serviceable. But Caron Butler became an all-star.
That's true.
You see what I'm saying? Does Kuz have it in him? Absolutely. Absolutely, he has it in him. Do I see it here in Washington? I just don't.
Right.
The East is too stacked. You have a lot of just a lot of players that are power play players, man. You have a lot of guys at his position that can play, that can hoop.
Yeah, that's true.
Kuz right now, he's doing what he's doing because he's probably one of the most underrated forwards in the East. Let's just call it what it is. He's one of the most underrated forwards in the East. That's why he's able to do what he's doing. The moment teams are like, the spotlight is on Kuz, that's what you should be asking yourself. What does that Kuz give us when Kuz is making $30 million a year? When the spotlight is on Kuz as an all-star, when you're the guy, when your face is up on billboards and stuff like that, when you become the guy, that's how Wizards fans should start thinking when it comes down to Kuz. Is that enough to give Kuz what he wants?
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Well, what kind of player do we think Kuzma is?
That's why I say he's at a crossroads because the thing is I don't think he's an all-star, but I think he can put up all-star numbers. You see what I'm saying?
So he's a fringe all-star.
It's a very weird dynamic because
Okay.
he gives you everything an all-star can give you, but it's not consistent enough. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
It's like, wow, Kuz made 7 threes tonight. But you ain't getting those 7 threes again for another 14, 15 games.
That's true.
Whereas Steph Curry, oh man, Steph Curry gave me 7 threes tonight. He turns around and he gives you a triple double the next game. He
Yeah.
ups the ante. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he's not consistent, is basically what you're saying.
Right. Kuz right now is very hard to gauge. Why do you think I asked that question on the last episode of State of Market? What is Kuz's market?
Right.
What is I don't know. We saying 25 to 30. Is it really 35, 25 to 30? I don't know. I mean, he's gonna ask for it,
Hmm.
but does the Wizards value him that high? I just don't I don't see it, man. Not unless he's an all-star. So with that said, because I'm sure this was a two-part question of yours.
Yeah.
If we don't give Kuz the money
Hmm.
and we give KP his contract, where does that leave Rui, right?
Right.
I think that yes, it's true. Rui probably won't be valued at 90 million, but I think the Wizards still give him 90 million
Mm.
because you're giving Rui what you believe that he will be eventually valued at. With the salary cap increase, the fact that he's only what 24 years old right now,
Hmm.
you're paying Rui what he can be going forward, not what he is right now. You would be paying Kuz what he is right now.
Okay. I think that's fair.
Because look, and I'll let you finish. 9 times out of 10, this offseason, the Spurs are gonna have plenty of money to
Hmm.
I could see the Spurs giving Rui a $90 million contract.
I can see that too.
I could see that. I could see Greg Popovich falling in love with Rui and saying, you know what, okay, that's one guy that I think we can build. He reminds me of Kawhi. I miss a guy like him. I molded a guy like him. I have no problem playing a guy like him in my rotation on a night to night basis in the starting lineup as a core player at $90 million.
Mm. I can see that too.
Greg Popovich does it better than anybody.
Yeah, he does. And I think Rui will be open to going there because at least he will start.
Correct. So Greg Popovich isn't paying Rui 90 million because that's what Rui is worth right now. He would be paying Rui 90 million for what he could potentially become for the Spurs going forward.
Yeah.
And then if you think, let's just say, let's just hypothetically say Rui becomes a Spur and Rui has, a breakout season at 20 points per game, in that system out there in San Antonio. 90 million looks like a bargain, does it not?
Well, of course.
Exactly. Exactly. So what are we going to be saying here if that happens?
Well, why he didn't show that while he was a wizard? That's what we
Well,
gonna be saying.
well, we know why he didn't show it, but
Of course, of
we're
course.
all it's all gonna be pointed to the fact that Rui's in a better situation
Hmm.
where he's showcased and he's able to showcase his talents a lot better, and he's playing to his strengths out there in San Antonio versus him being held back, him having a shorter leash, here in Washington. It's all about the culture, man. It's all about the
Agreed.
culture.
Agreed. So I have another question for you. You know, Wizards Twitter has been giving Wes Unseld a lot of flack, the last several days. What is your take on Wes Unseld Jr. as a coach? Do you think what is it, what are the things that you like about him, and what are the things that you would like to see him work on?
Well, what I do like about Wes Unseld Jr. is he's he doesn't mind being different. Like I think that he's trying new things and he just really wants to see things, work. And he's always willing to change the way we play the game. It's just that his system is just so convoluted that, you know, it shows on the basketball court. And people complain about it because you can see it. What are they doing out there? This is a mess. But that all comes with, being a second year head coach. But I don't know. I think that our expectations for West coming through the door was a little too high. It just goes to show. It goes with everything else. Denny, Rui, Kispert. I'll even throw in Johnny Davis because we picked Johnny at 10 and we expected Johnny to come in right away and do 10 pick things. This is the Wizards organization we talking about, man. Everything takes time. I said this on the show Locked On Wizards. Everything takes time. We just have to see where it goes. But what do I think? What was the second part of that question? What I think he could work on?
Yeah.
What I think he could work on is number one, being able to hold his players accountable. Stick to that. You came through the door saying that. You came through the door talking about accountability. You came through the door preaching defense. You came through the door talking about this guy's going to have an assignment. This guy's going to have an assignment, and we're going to hold him to that. If this is what you preach, then continue to practice it. And this goes for everybody on the roster, including your franchise player, man. Like, why are we just dismissing the fact that Bankroll can shoot 0 for 9 and a quarter, or Will Barton can go out there and throw up 7, bad shots? Monte Morris can have a 20-minute bad game, and you're not holding these guys accountable. But as soon as Rui, Denny, Kispert, Gafford, as soon as these guys have bad games, oh man, forget about it. These guys on the trade block.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? You're setting bad examples when you discipline the young guys, but you don't discipline the vets. It's like it goes back to that Denny situation. Remember when Denny scored the layup in clutch and he was on the floor and people was
Flexing, yeah.
flexing. Yeah, he was being criticized for flexing. Like, how many times did Bankroll do that? And how many
Too
times
many.
has he done it in the past?
Too, I
And and
mean,
and guess what? Wes and the media, no one said anything about that. But let's get all on Denny's case for doing the exact same thing the franchise leader does. Well, it's not. It's not Bankroll's fault for Denny flexing. Says who? The leader does it. So guess what?
why
The
can't
other
the young
player,
guy do it right?
they're gonna follow the leader, man. Come on.
So so let me ask you this. So since you brought that up, if Denny was shooting a free throw and then he shimmies after making the free throw and we're down by 20, what do you think Wizards Twitter will be saying about that?
They would be saying
I mean,
trade.
come on, man. This actually happened. Our franchise player was at the free throw line, hits a free throw, shimmies, and we're down by 20.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. They would say trade Denny, and they would literally brush it off with Bankroll. They would brush it off. They would simply say, "That's just what Bankroll Bill does." They would really brush it off, man.
I
And
mean,
and it goes back to last season, my dude. Think about Dinwiddie. Think about when he talked about the culture. Think about how he said that, some guys didn't want him leading.
yeah.
Like, man, talk about exposing some pretty bad culture habits. Like, and then Kuz this season comes out and says we all like each other. Last season we gave up. He recently came out and said that. Last season we gave up. This season we're going to fight hard.
Yeah, yeah, he did say that. He said we're going to fight hard, but he also said that the offense should run through him. But then Bankroll said the offense should run through KP. I mean,
It's a culture. It literally, no one is on the same page. No one's on the same page.
it's what was said last year is sticking this season. The
Right.
prisoners are running the asylum. Let's
Right.
just call it what it is. At the end of the day, you know, if the man upstairs who writes the checks, if he doesn't see anything wrong with what's going on, then it's pretty much just going to trickle down to everybody else. And that's what leads to fans saying that we actually started tanking in 2019, 2020. Come on, man. You can't make this up. At the end of the day, I mean, we're a mediocre team. And that's another thing, too. You talked about this, and it actually was an article about it. Whenever we play against teams, teams see us and they decide they're going to rest their players. What do you think about that? Do you think that there's some truth to that? That teams see us and say, we'll just go, you know what? KD, take the night off.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I do. I do. Have you looked at the standings lately?
Yeah,
Everybody's resting players. Everybody's around 500.
yeah,
I personally look at this as teams. See, here's the narratives again. It's a lot of parity in the league. It ain't. Of course, it would be if you resting your starters every night.
yeah, you're right.
It will be a lot. There is a lot of parity. There's a lot of parity in teams resting star players. There's a lot of
Yeah,
parity in that.
yeah, it
Everyone
is.
everyone wants a crack at Victor, man.
Yeah,
Everyone wants a crack at Victor. I,
but us.
but us. But the way that it's looking, you may have 4 or 5 teams at 500 at the end of the season. The way it's looking, if this continues on this trend, no one is going to be a lock to get the number one pick if everybody's playing 500 basketball. Like,
Well, that's true. I mean, if you look at it, not to cut you off, if you look at the standings right now, we're not drafting in the first round. We don't have a draft pick. We would actually lose our draft pick to the New York Knicks if
mhm.
we make the playoffs. We don't have one whatsoever. So that's why it's kind of pointless for us even to talk about who we should draft because we're not going to have a first round pick.
Right, we're not going to have a first round pick.
We're
The
not going to have one at all.
the
But just to
Magic and
kind of
the
piggy,
yeah, go ahead.
no, just to piggyback off with with you saying, there are some teams that are looking at Victor Wembanyama, and there's some teams that want him, and then there's some teams that are just preserving their star players. I think round about next month, we're going to start seeing teams rest rest their players a lot less. We're not going to see too many teams saying, "Okay, we're going to play Washington. Hey, you know what? Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr. have a seat. We're going to rest you guys." You're going to see a lot less of that eventually, because that's when the season starts to get serious. And in my opinion, I think that's when we're going to really find out what kind of team we really truly have. Losing Rui is going to really hurt this team, despite what people think. We're going to really feel the effects. People are talking about we're feeling it now with the lone right. I think Rui's presence, his lack of presence, is going to make a bigger, bigger, bigger impact than people are thinking it will.
Absolutely. And look, also, we're banking on Rui getting better. So if Rui was healthy at this period of time in the season, this is when other guys start falling off. And this is when some of the bench guys start to pick it up. We're going to be missing, the improvement of Rui, right? Because, Rui is right now, the injury is robbing Rui of that improvement.
Yeah,
It's robbing us of being able to see that improvement. So with every passing game, we're missing out on that improvement, ability or capability. So absolutely, man. People are resting, teams are resting their star players against us because, like you said, it's all about preserving them, and they don't feel that the Wizards is a game that's worth being injured on. Like, if the Minnesota Timberwolves knew that Cat would get injured last night, they would have rested Cat.
yeah,
If they knew that going in, they would have rested Cat, and they would have been like, it's not a game that's worth your injury. Like, you being injured, that game is not worth it.
yeah,
I can almost guarantee you that's what they're saying right now. Like, man, he got injured against the Wizards of all teams. It's not a good game to get injured against, you know? a lot of teams are just and look, another thing, uh other teams are seeing that too. They're seeing the Wizards almost like a trap game.
Hmm.
They're looking at the Wizards like a trap team. Like,
Because we were one last year. If you remember, and you and I had that conversation, not to cut you off, there were games that we played last year against certain teams, and next thing you know, a key player from that opposing team all of a sudden had COVID right after they played us.
right.
And I remember I said to you, I said, have you noticed that every time we play a certain team, all of a sudden this particular player is in safety protocol?
Yeah, yeah.
So I think teams are still thinking about that because there may be a couple of players on the team that may be not vaccinated. There's rumors flying around that Kuz is not vaccinated. We know Bankroll is vaccinated, but the dude constantly goes into safety protocol almost like every goddamn week. So you just never know what to expect.
We're always that team that I think other teams point out. We're that team that other teams point out. That's a game that I'm afraid of injuries. That's a game I'm afraid of, us, taking a step back. They're using us as that example. I think you had other teams too like that. You do got other teams like that too, but especially for us because we're right in the middle. We're a team that's in the middle. We're going to compete. We got players on our team that are big, strong, physical. You know, I think teams are very cautious of the Wizards. I really do, but more so because they don't really look at us as a threat. They just look at us as a trap,
Yeah,
if that makes sense. They look at us as a trap. They don't want to be caught in that Wizards trap.
right.
How many teams are gonna know that Cat got injured last night against the Wizards? Every team in the league.
Yeah,
Every team in the league is gonna know that Cat got injured against the Wizards last night. So that's how they're looking at us. They're not looking at us like, man, we surely are afraid of those Wizards. Nah.
nah. They just afraid to play against us because we're that dark alley. It's like, should I go down that dark? Nah, I think I won't go down that way. I don't know what the
Right.
hell is down there. That's
Right.
pretty much how we are. So I agree that teams are pretty much just resting their guys against us, and they just, we may see it tomorrow night. You never know, man. You never know who might be resting tomorrow night. Joe Harris may not play. I don't know.
Yeah, you don't know. So speaking of tomorrow night, predictions for tomorrow night, and we'll get out of here. What you got? Who you got?
I'm going with Brooklyn, man. I think Brooklyn is going to beat us.
Okay.
I think that I'm not gonna say it's gonna be a blowout. I say that Brooklyn will beat us 115 to 108.
115, 108. I got Brooklyn as well. Realistically, we're yes, we just snapped the streak, but we haven't really been playing that well. We just played well against a Timberwolves team who was just horrible offensively. Brooklyn
Hmm.
isn't that team. They're not that team, and they haven't been that team at home either. We have to bring our A game, and I just don't see us. Tomorrow night is a game we're going to need Rui. Let's put it that way. Tomorrow night's a game we're going to need, additional body that can at least give us, 13, 14 points. Rui actually plays pretty well against the Nets.
Hmm.
He plays really well against the Nets, so we definitely going to miss his production tomorrow night. I'm gonna say that the final score, you said 115, 108. I'm gonna go with 110 to 100. 110 to 100. Brooklyn. They'll beat us by 10. It's unfortunate that we'll that's the prediction, but it is what it is. I don't see us I just don't see. I don't know. I don't see us actually matching up well with them if they're healthy. If Kyrie's playing, KD's playing.
Yeah, and KD's a bit on a tear too. So yeah, he's
Yeah.
still KD.
I mean, look at what they did to us in Washington, man. They
Right, and that was with no Kyrie.
and that was with no Kyrie. They
That
they
was with no Kyrie. So
they they held us to 28 second half points.
yeah. I mean, that's still the Brooklyn Nets is still respectable, regardless of the fact. I know some people saying they're waiting for them to have a fire sale. I, you know, I guess you'll just be waiting for a minute. So, if anything, teams are waiting for us to have our fire sale, which we should have been had that. So,
Exactly. Well, that wraps up this episode of State of the Wizards, my dude. I want to thank the subscribers for tuning in. And be sure to share, like, and subscribe. And make sure that you drop us some comments, show us some love, as always. This wraps up this episode, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode 30, dropping soon. You guys have a good night. Peace.